Hello, everybody, and welcome to the Burn Network and welcome to Positive Fandom. I am your host, Artem, and today we have with us Stubble McShave. Stubble McShave, how are you today?
Well, I'm pretty good, but I have a bit of a cold, so maybe I will cough a little bit or something like that. But I hope it will be okay.
Well, I have a feeling the colds are going around right now. So I hope you feel better, Stubble. I hope you have your cough drops and lozenges ready because we're about to talk about a topic that you and I have been covering ever since this show first premiered in 2021. And that has to do with Robert Jordan's Wheel of Time television adaptation, which premiered on Amazon almost 2 years ago. So today we're going to be talking about season one, which you can watch on Amazon right now, everybody, before season two comes out. And certainly there's a lot to talk about this adaptation, which was a long time coming and certainly had a lot of fan involvement and fanfare around it, maybe more than I've ever seen of a book adaptation that's come out. What do you think, Stubble? Do you think that the creators of the television series did how well of a job do you think they did by incorporating the fans' experience in the premiere of season one of Wheel of Time?
I will have to say that they have been pretty good at it with communicating things with the fans and involving the fan community as a whole. They have had tasks for us to solve to get new pictures and trailers and posters and things like that. So they have been interacting with the fan community to some extent, at least. And I don't know how common that is for other franchises, but yeah, at least a group of fans have been in contact with the production. I wouldn't say they have been in contact, but there's been some exchange, at least with uh, more than I would say is common for most franchises.
Yes, and that is very interesting. Something that I do want to mention is that, of course, we're talking about the Wheel of Time based on Robert Jordan's books, which were written well over 20 years ago. It was a very successful series and certainly still available. I when I first started to talk to you about the Wheel of Time, Stubble, I started to listen to the audiobooks, which the star of the television series, Rosalind Pike, was the narrator for, which has been such a remarkable audio listen. And I've enjoyed every minute of it. I listened to that audiobook, and certainly she won something in Audie, which is an audio book award for her dictation of the book. Certainly, it's enjoyable. So I encourage anybody who is interested in wanting to listen to the book of Wheel of Time, at least the first one, to go ahead and go to Audible if you want to, or pick up the book and read it. So in 2021, the series was adapted and premiered on Amazon. Amazon took this on as a series, and I think it was very ambitious, Stubble, because it certainly wasn't an ordinary series to take on anything with this type of level of fantasy. Certainly meant that it was going to be quite a spectacular production, from the special effects to the costumes and design. Um, I really have to say that when we had learned about the series coming out, of course, you had mentioned it and how I learned about it. I didn't know how it was going to be adapted from the books. It wasn't the easiest thing to adapt, but they did manage to give us 8 incredible episodes, all of which we watched, and we're going to be talking about those 8 episodes right now. So, in the Wheel of Time, it circles around this power called the One Power, which is magic, for all practical purposes. For those of you who are watching and are unfamiliar with this story, and I think that this series really captures a lot of that one power and the mysticism behind it. Certainly, it wasn't the easiest thing to show on screen, but I feel that the adaptation from the book to what we got in the series certainly translated well. Stubble, was the one power represented well in series one, in your opinion, for the Wheel of Time?
I think it was a mixed bag. I think it was. Um, it could certainly have been a little better, but I thought it was okay for what they were doing, and I would like to have seen more differentiation between the different uh, threads of power. But I certainly thought that that was one of the better things that they did.
Yeah, and certainly it is something to think about when it comes to what Robert Jordan was trying to relate to the reader. That on-screen adaptation can be very different from what we would see in the book. Certainly, there were very specific things that had to be changed in order to make the series adaptable to certain events that could not occur in the same way that they did in the book. But for our purposes, episode one, where we do learn a lot of detail in a rather quick amount of time about what's going on in the story. There is a one power that when men have this one power, it drives them mad. They go insane. And there are also women who are able to use this one power, and they kind of not only use it for everyday purposes, but they also use it to tame situations. They actually have to hunt down people when they're possessed with the one power, if you will, and it doesn't fit well with them. So it is a very interesting concept that Robert Jordan created, and we have this prophecy that's based on something called the Wheel, hence the name of the series, The Wheel of Time. So, what did you think about the way that they presented the Wheel of Time as a myth and legend in this series for series one, Stubble?
I like that they introduced that it was a civilization that had there was a breaking that had failed. The civilization had been broken, and that they showed some images from the past that was futuristic in nature. And could you repeat the question? I don't remember what you said exactly.
Certainly, no worries. What I was saying is, do you think that that series one did a good job of explaining to people what the Wheel of Time is and how it relates to this story?
Yeah, I think they will go deeper into it in the following seasons. But it was an introduction that certainly showed what aspects of the wheel time, how it works. Then they have the unreliable narrator that always doesn't know all the truth, so they speak the truth that they think, and so there was some example of that in the show. But you, as a non-reader, I think you got the concept of what the Wheel of Time is, even if you didn't get all the details.
Absolutely, Stubble. And I'm going to bring up some photos, although this isn't strictly season one. This might include some season two photographs of how the production team worked to create the Wheel of Time. Certainly, it's a lot more complicated than what I'm showing here, but I just did want to let the viewers see a little bit more of that as we're doing this, because they did such an amazing job of trying to give us an authentic, and I have to change the view, just 1 second, to give us an authentic view of, oh, sorry, Stubble, just 1 second. I can't remember which one it is. It's this one. Okay. I had to go through the motions and switch it around and see which one was right. But certainly they didn't let us down when it came to, I think, the depictions of some of the most important characters in the story, Stubble. And certainly there are individuals who use the one power, women who end up becoming one power users to benefit all. And one of those titles that they get is called they're known as it's an Aes Sedai. Am I saying the correct word, Stubble?
Yeah, yeah.
And so you have these women who use the one power magic. They become Aes Sedai, and that's an incredible part of the story. But they also have warders who work with them. They're usually men. And here's a picture of one of the characters by the name of Lan, who is so important in season 1 with his Aes Sedai, Moraine Sedai, who he works together with. They have this bond, and it's so important that they have this bond in order for them to do what they're set out to do. In her particular case, her job is to find out information and be on the lookout, and report that information back to the White Tower, where let's say most of the other Aes Sedai sisters who use magic and the Amarillan seat are. So it's quite a lot of work to create this world and to also recreate the characters. This character is called Lan, and he's one of the warders of the main Aes Sedai there. And the story also continues with some of the other characters here. You can see Lan up close. The pictures are what is on IMDb, so I personally didn't pick all of them. But here's another character, one of the young women in the story by the name of Yi Gwen, along with a group of her friends who end up being very important to the story because they have the potential to have a profound effect over what is going to happen to their world. Can you explain a little bit more to us, Stubble, about what the role of the dragon is in this story of the Wheel of Time? And do you think that that was represented well in season 1?
I don't think they really got into who the dragon was in season 1, but if I should give you a book answer to what the dragon is, it's he's like almost, I wouldn't say a religious figure because they don't have religion, but he's someone that is sent out to I don't know what level I should put this on, but he's if you go metaphysics, he's a corrective mechanism for the creator to keep the wheel of time turning, and in order to do that, he is facing off against the Dark One several times during each turning of the wheel, every age. So the world has gone on for, we don't know how long. It could be 10,000 years, it could be 100,000 years, it could be 5 million years. We don't know in this fantasy world. And each turning of the wheel consists of 7 ages. And in some of these ages, the dragon faces off against the Dark One to keep the wheel turning, and so he can't destroy it and remake the world as he sees fit. And so the dragon is, what should we call it? He's like the focus point of the creator, the good force in the world. But he's also a source of everyone fears the dragon because we don't know what he will do when he faces the Dark One. So and also now in this age, it's the added benefit with he's going to go mad and probably kill some of his close friends if it gets to that. So he's a feared figure in the society, but he's also the hope for the society.
Absolutely, Stubble. I couldn't have said it any better. And certainly, one of the things that's also very interesting here, we can see one of the main characters. This character, played by Rosalind Pike, is Moraine Sedai, who is pretty much one of the main figures in the story. She does have the ability to channel the one power, and she does in the story. And she comes across, she goes to a area called the Two Rivers, and this is a bit of a spoiler, everybody, but it is available on Amazon to watch. I'm not going to say everything that happens, but what I am going to say is her introduction of Moraine, I think, was extraordinary. I think Rosalind Pike did a wonderful job playing this character. And certainly the picture I'm showing is for season 2, but she was fantastic in season 1, and she has to do everything she can to bring these 5 young people to the White Tower to figure out how they're going to identify who may be the person who is the most dangerous or potential dragon in the story. So that's what her plan is, and what a lot of series 1 focuses on. Here she is there. She has the ability to wield this power. She ends up going to their village, and it is quite a shock for them to what's going on. We learn on a day that is supposed to be a huge celebration, Stubble, when that day when she and her warder Lan arrive, things turn quite sour rather quickly, right after they survive. But the young, I think it's 2 young women and 3 young men who are there, have to adapt rather quickly after their town is attacked. And I think they did a very interesting thing to do, where at the end of the episode, they have to kind of leave town rather quickly, Stubble. It feels like quite a shock, and almost as if they shouldn't be doing that. They feels like they should be staying in their town and helping to rebuild. But I think it was a good decision for them to immediately go, because it seems as if the Aes Sedai aren't the only group of people in this world who feel that there is something about the one power, and that there is something that needs to be done about it. There is a group of people who are these sort of white cloaked individuals who also have a stake in what's going on in this magical world. Can you explain a little bit about them as well, Stubble?
Which ones?
The white cloaks, like Alden, Eamon Valda,
Yeah.
and that group
Yeah,
specifically.
I was just going to say that the image that you're showing, that's from the 2nd season, and it's
Yes, it is.
Moraine in I think the Foregate outside Carrion. Anyway, and she is a nobility of the town. The White Cloaks, it's like think of the Spanish Inquisition without the religion. It's a fanatical group of we are going to stamp out all the evildoers, and we're going to do it our way, and we are always correct, and they always find dark friends, as they are called, in when it suits them the best. They are the judge and jury and executioner often, and for the ones that they encounter. So they think of them as the fundamentalist Spanish Inquisition, but without the religion, but with a fundamentalism nonetheless. So that's how you should. That's one way you can think of them.
Exactly, and I do have some photographs that I managed to grab from the first episode here. I finally was able to get those available, so I'll just go ahead and present those now if I can. If I can just share my screen, and then we can kind of see this more in more of a context. Of course, this is when Moraine first visits the Two Rivers town, and there she is, played by Rosalind Pike. Yeah. And then, of course, yes, I'm sorry. Go ahead.
Yeah, as a book reader, it was very jarring the beginning of the show, because if they had taken the time of the books, which I would have loved if they had done, but then we have been 4 episodes in, and they hadn't left yet. So I know that a lot of book readers didn't like, and I also found it a bit jarring, the opening to the first episode. But I understand why they needed to, push it along, so to speak. Even though I personally would have liked to see them spend some more time there and had the same conversations and things that they had in the books. But anyway. So.
Well, I agree with you, Stubble. And of course, there's Egwene, one of the characters who wants to, in her village, or has hopes of possibly being a wisdom in her village, which is a custom there. She has a kind of rite of passage in the story in this first episode, but she's not there long before she also has to leave the village. And of course, after this rite of passage, there she is, or at least the tavern where everybody is celebrating because of Beltane, which takes place in that episode. And then the hair braiding episode, part of the story, which I thought was very interesting as well. Their cultural traditions shown there.
Yeah, all of those things with the hair braiding, that's off screen. We just hear about it afterwards in the books.
Exactly. And there are two characters again, Egwene on the left, and of course Nynaeve on the right, who happens to be the town's wisdom, who is pretty much so important to the village there and their life. Now, this young lady is Perrin's wife, another character in the story, who has a job in the ironworks. There she is with her husband in the first episode. And as I've said before, after this incredible series of events, there is an attack that takes place in the first episode. There you can see the town falls under attack, and certainly the 5 young people, I haven't showed you a picture of every single one of them, but have to leave quite quickly. So that episode does go by rather fast. And I agree, they could have taken a little bit more time to tell us more. But let's go ahead and look and talk about the next episode. As I mentioned before, it goes right into Eamon Valda, who is on the hunt for other Aes Sedai. Not everybody has a favorable opinion of the Aes Sedai. And as you said, you compared it to the Spanish Inquisition. I thought that was very interesting. Along the way, these 5 people are swept away by Moiraine and her warder, Lan, who are trying to explain what's going on, but there is a lot of confusion for them. And they have to deal with this somehow, find a way to understand what's happening to them, because it's rather quick for us, but it's even, it seems like it's even quicker for this party. And certainly they are doing everything they can to deal with it, but it must be so overwhelming for them to have to deal with all of this going on. So that was in episode 1. Episode 2, they're on the road. And let me see if I can get to episode 2 here quickly, which I'm not being able to do. So let me see if I can grab onto that. So another kind of very interesting thing is in episode 2, as they're fleeing away from this attack, these creatures called Trollocs, they end up in a rather mysterious location. And it seems to me, Stubble, that this group of young men and women have been quite sheltered in their town in Two Rivers. They don't know very much about the world. I mean, it seems like they've learned a little bit of the world solely by hearing what they've heard in books or what they've read, but they end up in a rather terrifying and mysterious city as Moiraine gets injured. What did you think about that depiction in Shadows Waiting, episode 2, in season 1?
I always wondered how they were going to depict Shadowlord in the series, and they, instead of having a mist that that killed people. They had like a black tar like substance, and I think that worked for its purposes. So I think it's good, and I think the city itself is it's very beautiful constructed and so on. And in the books there's a scene that is it would have been very very difficult to put on screen where they meet a certain individual. So as an adaptation, I think this works pretty well. But as a book reader, I will always the books are up here. The series is a little bit below, but I think there's potential.
Okay. I've heard a lot of people say that because it has kind of a bit farther away from where the books take you. And of course, here's a picture of Damon Valda, Eamon Valda, excuse me, who is unfortunately captured one of the Aes Sedai, one of these female one of the magic users, and she is essentially, I mean, it's quite a horrific scene. He's burning her at the stake like a witch. What did you think about the way he was depicted here in this series?
Yeah, I must say that the sponsor label on the picture makes it much more disturbing. Don't mask orders, neutralize them. But anyway, I was so caught up in that. What did you say about the picture? Sorry.
Did you think that they did a good job of depicting Eamon Valda in the series?
Well, he's not exactly like the Eamon Valda of the books, but he represents the twisted philosophy of some of the White Cloaks. So he represents the fundamentalists, and he demonstrates their hatred and against the Aes Sedai and also other groups, but primarily Aes Sedai. So yeah, for they can't have every character, and they have to rearrange some stuff. So for what they were doing, he worked in that sense.
Well, it was very creepy how he was collecting some of the artifacts from the Aes Sedai's, their rings in particular, which upon their death would have been brought back to the White Tower and I guess melted down. I also wonder what happened to their warders. Does every Aes Sedai have a warder who is with them?
No, the Red Sisters who they generally dislike men totally, so they don't have warders. They are not allowed to have warders, and they don't have warders. And that was one thing that I in the first episode I didn't like, that they started with the perspective of a Red Aes Sedai, because that gave the audience the impression that everyone fought like they did. But warders, you can say that the red and the greens are polar opposites. The greens can have and often have multiple warders, and the red have no warders. Whilst the other colored Aes Sedai have usually one warder, not always. And I think something that the show did pretty good was establishing the warders, because the books really don't get into the warders. They are like coming along with the Aes Sedai. You rarely see warders in a conversation in the books. They are more side characters that stand around and look menacing. There are, of course, sometimes that they are involved, but usually not.
Well, they certainly didn't seem like side characters in the series. They seemed like an incredibly important part of the series, the way that it was depicted in season 1. And in this picture, we have a picture of Rand and Perrin, two of the young men who are along with the party from the Two Rivers who find themselves on the road, and once again they're in this city, which ends up being a way to separate the five of them um, in a very clever way. And many they find themselves all going off in separate directions, which I thought was done very well. Some of the characters had to kind of jump over of the wall of the uh, that surrounds the entire city, while others managed to kind of just escape on horseback. I thought that that was done very well. And in this particular photograph, we have Moraine telling um, the party about the history of some of the fighting regarding pretty much the One Power and the Wheel of Time. Would the party have known anything about this had Moraine not told them about it?
Now she tells them about a historic event that happened in their home village, in their hometown. It was it was not in their village; it was in the nation's capital that was destroyed, but from their area, and they had just heard, certain names and so on, and they didn't really know. And in the books, she has a long speech where she fires up the people. Here she had it on a horseback, and I know that this was one of the scenes that the showrunner really fought to get through, because the studio was pretty heavy-handed at times, and he wanted to get this thing through. But so they're talking about. Well, I won't get into that because that's a 5-minute conversation, just a monologue from my side. So so she talks about events that happen in their home area, in their home region, thousands of years earlier.
Well, it's quite a compelling story, and of course, for those of you who do watch it, it's a terrifying story of what had happened in the past. And there, of course, is Rand, also another one of the party members from the Two Rivers, there along with the journey. But I think that for that episode, one of the things that it was supposed to do was to separate everybody, and it does end up separating quite a bit of the party. And it seems like it could be quite dangerous for them not having the protection of Moraine or of Lan or even any guidance. You know,
Yeah.
at least four of them are on their own. And it made me wonder how on earth they were going to navigate going around and figuring out, where they should go and what they should do. In fact, they do feel like they're quite confused and, more or less terrified about what's going to happen to them since they've been separated from the rest of the party. Um, what did you think about them doing that in that particular case? Did they need to be separated? Do you think it was portrayed well in the series?
Yeah, they were separated at the same place in the books as well, and in more or less the same way. Not exactly the same way, but more or less. Of course, the Gleeman had joined them earlier in the books, but he joined them later in the series. So, but I thought they did yeah, that was not something that I had issues with. It was a good way to separate them, and and a little bit of an not an action moment, but a little raised the heartbeat a little bit. And I thought it was a good way to depict that bit of the series.
Well, the next few episodes, we pretty much find out a lot of information. In this episode, Nynaeve and Perrin in episode 3 are pretty much on their own, and they encounter a group of people called travelers who end up befriending them. Perrin is dealing with his own issues. He has this unfortunate experience where he ends up killing somebody that he cares very deeply about, and he's carrying this burden. He hasn't told anyone about it. Meanwhile, Nynaeve she's kind of on the fence with this man that she loves, Rand, and it is quite interesting to see how she's struggling with what it means if she can be with this man that she loves, or does she have to choose another path in life, which means that she can't be with him in the story? And it is very tough. The thought of her having to deal with this. Certainly, um, they have narrowly escaped being accosted by the White Cloaks, but then they end up getting captured by them again. And Perrin and Nynaeve have this very interesting experience where they have to kind of get out of that situation rather quick.
Yeah.
Meanwhile,
I was just going to say it's not Nynaeve, it's
sorry,
Egwene.
Egwene. Sorry.
Yeah,
Thank
yeah,
you, Trevor, too. Sorry. Egwene here in the picture, it's clearly Egwene and not Nynaeve. And so Nynaeve is the one who unfortunately was taken right after the Trolloc attack. We don't know what's happened to her. In fact, everyone thinks that she might have perished, right, Stubble?
yeah. And so it's a much more actiony kind of thing in the TV series. Just as a counterpoint, in the books, uh, she doesn't have a physical fight. She has a fight with the council to go after the young people. Um, and one way to remember Egwene's name is she's called Egwene Alware, which is a play on Guinevere, the Arthurian uh, person. But
Exactly.
yeah, and so Nynaeve in the TV series, she is during the attack taken by the Trollocs and managed to escape. And what was your question?
Well, I also noticed that through their experience, um, at some point, uh, when Moraine and Lan get separated from the party, um, it's Nynaeve who finds them, and she does help at least try to treat Moraine a little bit because Moraine has an
Yeah,
injury, an injury from a weapon, and there are no other Aes Sedai around, so she's been suffering with this. But they
yeah,
do eventually cross paths with other Aes Sedai, and here we do actually see some of these Aes Sedai. In this picture, there's two green Aes Sedai and two red Aes Sedai who are behind this. I guess you would call them a false dragon
yeah,
in the picture. And this is one of the first, although I'm not talking in sequence, Nynaeve encounters finally these other Aes Sedai sisters during this time. It certainly is quite an experience for Nynaeve. She has kind of felt that the sisters in the White Tower don't like the let's say other women from the Two Rivers in the series, at least, because they took one look at them and said that they're not kind of worthy to even be part of the family. But some pretty miraculous things end up happening as they are guarding this prisoner here,
yeah,
and you can see them all kind of around him, trying to protect him. And Nynaeve ends up getting, and this is a little bit out of sequence, but when Lan realizes that Nynaeve is alive and has been tracking them, he kind of has to keep her there so she doesn't sort of run off and honestly get killed again, I guess, more or less, or even injure them. I'm not quite sure. There were so many pictures of that, but
yeah,
she ends up doing something, or at least trying to help um, Moraine, which I thought was wonderful for her to do. And of course, she would do that because she's a wisdom. She's going to help. But most importantly, she seems to be creating a kind of bond with Lan,
yeah,
which I was not expecting to happen. And that also I think is interesting because these warders, as you said, did not necessarily have as extensive description and role in the book, but they certainly do have a huge role in the series. What do you think about how they've been put forward more in the television series?
the Aes Sedai, you mean, or the
The warders.
yeah, okay. So there was a couple of things there. Uh,
Yes.
I think they wanted to establish the Aes Sedai directly in the first season, compared to the books where you hardly see them except for Moraine. and another one for a short bit. But they are so fundamental to the series as a whole that they wanted to establish them in the first series, which made them push out like parents' story to, I think, season 2 to a certain extent. He was more or less he didn't do anything in this first season. So I think we will see a bit more from him in season 2, where we'll see more of his development. When it comes to Nynaeve and land, the water, then I would say that in the books there's, we see almost everything from a Rand's point of view in the books, and he notices things, but he doesn't put 2 and 2 together. He's very stupid when it comes to social interactions, and so in the series we get to see when they talk to each other in the wilderness, which we didn't get to see to that extent in the books. We just had one point of view from Nynaeve where they were talking more or less. We had a few point of view chapters, but they didn't go into their relationship because Rand wasn't there to witness it in the books. But I think one thing that Robert Jordan, when he was writing, he did very many things very good, but one thing he didn't do good was the development of romances. And I would say that the show has been better in that respect. And I think because if you're not paying attention in the first book, it comes out of the blue for the reader that they had formed a relationship towards the end. And in this we get to see them, which we didn't there. And was there something more to your question?
No, but in the next episode, certainly we do see this incredible battle. They're at Galadin, and I don't know whether I'm pronouncing that correctly, but we do see this battle between, let's say, the false dragon and the king. And certainly this is the false dragon that's being transported by the Aes Sedai. And they're bringing him to the White Tower to be put under judgment. And in this scene, we actually see a photograph. It's not the easiest thing to translate in a photograph, but it is, of course, let's say the dark power talking to him because he has this power and trying to influence.
The taint ghosts, that some call it.
Yes. And certainly they are trying to influence his decisions as to what he's going to do. They don't have an incredible influence, at least from what I can see, over his decisions, but it does seem quite haunting and quite controlling over anyone who has this power, especially when he is at a point where he has to make a very important decision. And these are the Red Ajah Sedai who are there and pretty much, as you said, don't like men. And they do hunt down men who have this one power, which in the story they can't control very well. So that's their role there. There's a group of them. And here are some other characters in the story as well. Mat, who is also haunted by what appears to be the Dark One, along with Rand on the right, and this storyteller, Marilyn, I think is his name. And an incident happens there as the two young men are separated from the party. A lot of influence and dreams and possession seem to be happening in the story, Stubble. What did you think about the outside influences working on the 5 characters, the 5 potential dragons, as they are separated in the story?
Yeah. As I've said earlier, they had to be more effective in getting the point across with so they Mat and Rand were traveling through, in the books, were traveling like 8, 9, 10 villages with different inns. I don't remember the exact number, but there were a lot of places they had one encounter at one, another encounter at one, and here you have condensed a bit, and we see how Matt has been. Uh, it's the dagger that he got from Shadow Logoth that's affecting me here, and uh, we get to see that he, he acts kind of weird. He's suspicious of people. He's, you know, that kind of thing. And how they were separated and their journey, it follows it to some extent, and I think they did a pretty good job. But uh, one thing there are two things I didn't like with Perrin when he was with the Tuathan, the traveling people. That and you know, he met Elias and got his whole introduction to the wolf thing there. But I think that whole bit is pushed to season 2, and I think we'll get that there. And I hope they do it justice there. And what was I saying? Because
I'm sorry.
yeah.
Go ahead.
No, you go ahead.
You were just saying that you hope that about the wolf part with Perrin it gets covered in season 2. Why is that? Why did?
Because I got the impression that they wanted to establish the Aes Sedai and the Warder and their relationship at the start, and because in the books, Perrin has a development in the first 4 books, and then he's treading water for 5 or 6 books, and then he has a development again. So it didn't hurt that they pushed that forward a bit, and so I think that's what they're doing. I hope that's what they're doing, because I didn't like how they treated him in season 1. He didn't get anything to do, wasn't decisive in any way or anything like that. But I think that will come in season 2. I've got the impression from the promotional material, at least.
Yeah, that is very interesting. And of course, here's a picture of Moiraine as she's been healed by one of the other Aes Sedai sisters, Corrine, and they are still guarding this false dragon. Certainly a very dangerous task for them. Something dramatic happens while they are guarding this dragon. Is another character who's a traveler in the episode, but we see quite a miraculous scene between the Aes Sedai and this false dragon. And I don't actually have a photograph of it, but something incredible happens where we find out that Nynaeve has an incredible ability, and that ends up helping the Aes Sedai greatly in this episode. It certainly was, I think, a quite dramatic demonstration of her power. I enjoyed that part. What did you think about that in the end of episode 4?
Yeah, you know, almost nothing in episode 4 happened in the book, so they really did, constructed the whole thing there. And there were inconsistencies, but it's a different medium. They're doing a different thing. So because when I watched the TV series, I had to watch it 2 times. Because the first time I watched it for what it was, what it wasn't. It wasn't the books, so I could establish that, put that aside, and then I watched it again and watched it for what it was. And I will have to do that with season 2 as well, because if you just watch it one time, you just focus on the changes and you don't see what's there really. When it comes to that whole episode 4, I thought it was effective storytelling, and I really liked that they increased Loghain's part in the show. I can't tell you how many times I discussed with other fans when we just had the books that I wish we had more Loghain in the beginning. I wish they could have talked. I wish because we don't see him so much in the beginning. We just see him, in a wagon through a town, and then we don't see him for a bit. So I think I like that they increased his role, and I think it will be important to show to not tell but show the insanity part, and maybe have conversations with him where you get that. And we see that he's a pretty powerful channeler, and so I wonder how. Sorry, the lozenge just get me. So I wonder how powerful they will display Rand towards the end of the if we get to the end of the whole series. But I think when it comes to Logain, I think they did a pretty good job.
Yeah, and I do just want to pop up a few of these comments. Trevor says Bella should be the main. I hope I'm saying this right. Bella should be the main point of view character. She's the true hero of the story. Okay, thank you for sharing that.
That's an inside joke.
Well, Otea says they just hate Rand in the show and take some of his best moments away. Tarwin's Gap comes to mind.
Tarwin's Gap was a disaster in episode 8, but I give them some, they just had COVID and they had a big battle plan for episode 8. And they had to scrap everything and do whatever they could with social distancing, and they couldn't have Trollocs in their suits. They had to do horrible CGI versions of Trollocs. So I don't know how episode 8 would have been if COVID hadn't existed right then. And they had to rewrite a lot of episode 7 and 8 because one of the central cast members left the project after episode 6 when they had the COVID break. I don't know the reason. I don't know the reason for his departure, but so they had to re-edit episode 6 and they had to rewrite episode 7 and 8 totally, and they had to come up with new locations that works for COVID distancing, and they had a limited budget. So episode 8 was the worst episode in my opinion. But to some extent, it's understandable given the circumstances. I would have liked to seen some other things that what we got from it, but there are some mitigating circumstances for the horrible episode 8.
And Patrick says, I also like the show. Many of the scenes were quite different from the books, but the heart is there. Season 1 was okay. Hopefully season 2 is better, thus improving over time, just like the book series. Yeah. And that is very interesting. Yes. And I kind of skipped a little bit ahead to episode 5, where they're back in the White, I guess at the White Tower. And certainly, as they're in the White Tower, there is Moiraine, who's trying to figure out how she's going to handle the politics of the Aes Sedai and that entire thing. It is very interesting seeing the characters realizing that after they have delivered this false dragon, and how what happens to Moiraine, and pretty much that they have to go ahead to the prison where the Dark One is in order to resolve this entire thing. What did you think about the politics and the depiction of the politics going on there, Stubble? What did you think about that? And of course, we do see the history of Suen, who happens to be the Amaryl in seat in this story.
Yeah. I really like that we got to see the inside of the White Tower this early in the series, and we got to see the different factions to some extent, at least. And I would say that episode 6 that this is from, I would say that it is probably my favorite episode in this season. I'm not sure. I know that episode 8 was my least favorite episode. That's and yeah. Anyway, but I think the design was pretty good. They had a limited budget. They had limited, they couldn't build the whole cathedral that they were in. They had to rely on the sets that they were possible to build, and I thought they did a good job with what they had. I would like to have seen much bigger vistas inside and so on, but we got the corridor and a room and a little bit else, but we'll get more. And this is from I think this was from what was cut out. I don't think this was in the show. This image.
And so, as you and I were talking about, one of the most important things that happens after Moiraine has this order by the Amyrlin seat, Suan, that the group of them are meant to head out to the prison where the Dark One is. And certainly this Ogier ends up accompanying them so they can travel via the steps, which is a way that they can travel. I think he said one or two steps in the steps can be an entire day or a week on land or something to that effect, which was very interesting. There they are heading to it. This actually may not be a production photo, just an actual photo of in what they're doing, but this is pretty much most of the cast there in that picture. And certainly, as you'd mentioned, Stubble, in the end, not everybody ends up going on the journey. And so it is something to think about. Wow, that's a lot of money, Tom, who says that it costs $12 million per episode. That's a lot of money. That's like the price of a movie. Some movies have been made for that price.
Yeah, but it's half of a Star Wars episode. Or something
yes,
like that.
Exactly. Tom G. Jackson, thank you for that bit of information. A moderator, collaborator, friend, and so much more here to the channel, part of the Burnetwork family. So there is that. And, I think that, looking at these, just who, even the casting, Stubble, what was your opinion on the casting for this series, for series 1?
I thought the cast did an excellent job as actors. I know that some people had issues with some of the cast. I thought it was a fine cast, and I also know that a lot of people, everyone didn't look exactly like they look in they're described in the books, but many more than they think actually did. Often people just default to what they think it is. When they get limited description, they often default to what they think it is. But I thought the cast did a lot of unknowns that did a great job for what they were doing, and Rosamund held them together, as the veteran, and supported them. And I think I have no issues with the cast.
Yeah, I had no issues either. And certainly it could have gone many ways when it comes to the cast, as we all know. They could have done so many different choices, but I was happy with it so far. And then also, if we're going to kind of wrap up our review of season 1, and if I can just get to the next, at the final episode here in this, if I can. Somehow, the end of season 1, I kind of liked when they were in the ways, but I'm not quite sure whether a lot of people enjoyed that journey. I wasn't quite sure what I was expecting of what they were going to show you, and of course, we saw the battle, and essentially was the what I believe to be the way for Rand, or you find out more about Rand there. And his past. And Rand has been told several times that he looks like he's from a certain area, but he does not believe it. Of course, Rand is in love with Egwene here. And we do see this character who is fighting. And ironically, although I don't think it shows you in the picture, he is fighting against Rand's adoptive father, right, Stubble?
Exactly. Yeah, and we get that in a dream sequence. Not in a dream sequence. Someone remembers
A flashback,
remembers.
yes.
Yeah. In a flashback. In the books, we get someone remembering what happened to them, and then they find the woman after she's have had the fight. Here we see the fight, and yeah, I thought it was a very effective start to episode 7, and she has. Oh, I won't go into that. It's a little spoilery, but
Well, it's been
yeah.
2 years, so I don't feel that it's necessarily.
No, I mean spoiler for the future.
Oh, I see what you're saying.
Yeah.
Exactly. And so the last episode, which is the Eye of the World, which I'm going to share, we do see a situation where they're in Tar Valar. I believe that's the name of the town, and certainly they are there because they had to run out of the ways rather quickly, because Trollocs were in the ways, and they warn the people in the there that the Trollocs are there and what's been going on. Certainly, it was quite a shock to everybody. Now all of a sudden, there's going to be this attack, and here we
Yeah.
can see Nynaeve and Egwene, who had joined with some of the other Sedai to try and protect the city there.
Yeah,
And here's a picture.
I can tell you that the image that you had earlier there before, that was something that I don't think anyone liked. It was one of the major things that made me dislike episode 8. But anyway.
Well, it's something to think about, because now that they're going forward, we know that the episodes are done and they're going to be airing next Friday. Will they improve in the depiction of a lot of what many people don't care for in the series? This is something that I'm curious about. You and I are going to be reviewing the series, and here, of course, is Rand speaking to let's say the Dark One, and what happens to him during this journey where he starts to understand what his role is there. And there's the king of Tar Valar.
And this was the thing I talked about, the distancing. They, instead of close combat, they had crossbows from a distance and illogical things. But so I would have hoped for a bigger battle there at the end.
Exactly. It is certainly something to think about going forward, and we're kind of left in the story, which was something that you had predicted, Stubble. You thought that the series would end where we would see an entire fleet of ships coming at a shoreline, and that's exactly what we see at the end of season 1, which was your prediction, Stubble. You were the one who said that you thought that was what was going to happen in the series, and that is exactly what happens at the end of series 1. We have a few minutes to talk about what we are expecting for season 2. What are your predictions from what you've heard, Stubble?
My prediction is that we will see more Perrin's development. I know that Elias have been cast for season 2, and I hope we get more of that. And I think we'll get more individual developments rather than the whole party traveling. So I think we'll get more character growth for every person, and we'll get the introduction of Elaine that many they wanted to see Rand fall into the palace garden in the first season, but so she's a character that was introduced in one chapter in the first book, and we'll see more of her in season 2. And for reference, she's a daughter.
She's a daughter, right?
What?
She can see the future, right?
No, that's not her. That's not her. No, she wasn't at all in the first season. She's a daughter, more or less a princess from that get acquainted with the rest of our cast of characters. And and we will the big antagonists of season 2 will be the Seanchan, which are the ships in the end of season 1, and I think they have upgraded the look for season 2 compared to season 1 from what I've seen. So the one power is looks better. The costumes looks better, and it looks like a more expensive show. And what do I more expect? I expect that some characters will go through some trauma, and yeah, I'll just mention, for those who knows, the around the neck thing, and I think we'll be introduced to some more bad guys, like not the, as we know after season 1, it wasn't the Dark One, it was one of his one of the Forsaken. We can call it one of his henchmen to simplify things, and we will get more of those, at least one more. And yeah, I hope it will improve upon season 1, and we'll see. I think season 1 was, from if you would rate it, it was a 6 out of 10 for me. It was, I liked some things, I disliked some things, and I hope season 2 will be pick it up 1 or 2 steps.
Yeah, I agree, Stubble. I think that they dropped the ball a few times in the series, and things don't exactly match up, and they don't flow as smoothly as they could. Trevor Sanders says, Machinchen in the books, bitter blood so bitter, drink the blood and crack the bone and suck the marrow, bitter marrow, sweet screams, singing screams, and in the series, nobody likes you. Of course, we also have Oteo, I know I'm saying that incorrect. And we have been reading your comments, says Karen dealing with his made up wife's death while randomly wanting Egwene and not having his mentor Elias. Yeah, it's a lot. I'm curious, he or she says, how can they even do the Great Hunt? These are good questions.
Yeah. Well, they are doing Great Hunt, but they are also pulling a lot from the Dragon Reborn, because there are a lot of repeating story, what do you call it? Not storylines, but plot structures. So it could be repetitive to 2 seasons that have similar plot structures. So they are going to pull things on Dragon Reborn into season 2, and then season 3, as they are, I don't know if they're filming now with the strike, but if they were filming, it would be season 3 would be book 4, and they have said that they are sticking more to the books for season 3. Season 2 will be a lot of some departures. They have aged up the relationship. So instead of a flirt, it's a full-blown relationship, for instance, in some ways. So I don't know how people will feel about that. I can't tell you until I see it. So there will be moments that we recognize from the Great Hunt, but they will also take some liberties to get to those points.
Certainly. And we have yet to see, it's just 1 week away when we get the first. Are we getting more than 1 episode? Are we getting a few? Is it the first 2 or 3?
We get 3 episodes.
All right. So Stubble, you and I will be back here next week to look at those first 3 episodes right here on the Brit Network and on Positive Fandom, to go ahead and take a look and see how season 2 is different with all the challenges from season 1. Certainly there were a lot of challenges, and hopefully the depictions of what's going to happen in season 2 will be an improvement over season 1. Certainly I hope that is the case and that the series does improve. Stubble, thank you so much for joining me today to do this review. And thank you everybody who has made comments here in the chat. We are seeing here. Trevor is asking you a question, Stubble. He says, what do you think of the Min changes?
I realize that people may have issues with it if they mean how she looks or where they met her. I had another picture in my head of Min but we'll see where they take it. And I I don't have very strong feelings either for or against. He was never one of the big characters for me. I know it may have been for you. I don't know, but we'll see. Uh, I hope they do as best good of a job as they can, and I know that there are differences, but in most adaptations there are differences. Then I know that many people don't like a lot of the things. I don't like certain things. I like other things. I think they did the relationship pretty good, much better than Robert Jordan did. I think they missed some steps, certainly in episode 8, and I didn't like the rushed feeling in episode 1. And there are also other things here and there, but I think there's potential. There are many TV series that had shall we call it a rough season 1, and then they picked up, and I hope this does as well. I think it was. I certainly liked certain things, some things about it, but I had problems with some things. So we'll see.
And thank you, Trevor, for asking the question. There's a lot that was not included and was changed and rearranged in this series for whatever reason. And hopefully they'll be able to kind of bring it together in a better way in season 2. Patrick says the Machinshin in the show allows the show to externalize characters' fears that are more easily communicated in the books because we have access to characters' inner thoughts via their points of view. Well, thank you, Patrick.
That's one of the big things in the books. We are so much in people's heads. They are thinking so many things. They are thinking so much, but they are not saying them. And in a TV series, you have to give the information. You can't hear people's thoughts in the same way. So they have to rearrange, construct new things to get things across. Because when there are the pairing chapters in book 1, for instance, he maybe says 10 words in 5 chapters. The rest is in his head. And you can't do that in TV series. You have to. And then they didn't do that thing with Perrin. They pushed his Elias things to season 2, but yeah, we'll see.
And Corum says the show needs to be hit with balefire. LOL. Yeah, Corum.
You don't know what balefire is, right?
Is bale? Tell me what balefire is.
I don't think this is a huge spoiler. It's like a blast of energy, so to speak, and when it hits something, it destroys it and it erases it a bit back in history. So if you hit someone, their actions that they did the last 10 seconds doesn't exist anymore.
And of course,
I don't know if I made that clear.
You did make it clear. And I'm almost wondering if their approach to this series could have been very different, a type of approach where they do kind of go into more detail that way and tell the story a little differently, because they are trying to include a lot. They're trying to include a lot. They're trying to do a general overview of something that's incredibly detailed. And, when you try to approach series this way, it's not easy to really get the meaning. And Ote-Io says, you both are amazing, by the way. Thank you so much for that. We hope we see you back for
our... I'm sorry about my throat. I'm a little hoarse in the throat, but yeah.
I think you sounded fine, Stubble. And I hope you come back and let us know what your thoughts, all of you in the chat, what your thoughts are of the next 3 episodes, which Stubble and I are going to be reviewing next week.
And I hope I have time to watch them, because I have to watch them, as I said earlier, I have to watch them 2 times. I have to watch them just to, okay, this is what we get, and then I have to watch them.
Absolutely.
First I must recognize the changes that are made, then I can put that to the side, and then I can see what we get. So I have to watch them 2 times.
I'm the same way, Stubble. I do like to rewatch the shows and figure out what's going on, because this is not a simple show. There's a lot going on in the show. And, I think that if they had chose to tell the series from a certain point of view, I'm not quite sure whether just telling it from certain segments from one point of view is enough in this case. So this might be something that, very interestingly enough, I think I've seen a few movies where they'll try and show 2 or 3 points of view. It's not the easiest thing to do. Not everyone can do it. And certainly there's a lot of information in this series that makes it more difficult to adapt to a screen as far as I'm concerned. However, I still encourage everybody to just go ahead and read the book. I enjoyed that audiobook so much. So I just want to thank you, Stubble, for being here today.
And I would say if you read book 2, because the first book is, you can't get away from it. It's a little bit of a Tolkien clone book. It's a little reminiscent of the first Lord of the Rings book. Some themes here and there. The further you get away from that, the further he does his own thing. We get more political intrigue, and we get more the One Power being used, and we get more what the Wheel of Time really is. Because I would say the first book is the one that is least like the rest of the series. So
then I better start to read the rest of the series then.
Or you can listen to them while you do your dishes.
Yes, that is exactly what I will be doing. As you guys know, I love my audiobooks. So I certainly will be turning on the audiobooks and enjoying those because they are so wonderful. And Stubble, again, want to thank you so much for being here. Thank you so much for the kind words about the review. We're going to be back next week looking at those first few episodes. Certainly, I want to thank Tom Jr. Jackson for being here, our moderator, collaborator, and good friend. And make sure you subscribe to Tom Jr. Jackson's channel as well, guys. We will be back next week here on the Burn Network and Positive Fandom to talk more about the Wheel of Time and see if they've made changes to these characters, see what they're focusing on, see what's going on with the series. Certainly, there's a lot to talk about with the series and more about what we think could have been done and what was changed and what we love and what we don't care for. We're going to say it all right here on this review show here on the Burn Network and on Positive Fandom. Stubble, where can people find you?
I just want to say one thing first. I saw a comment from Tom Jr. Jackson about Wheel of Time Origins. And I would say if you have read the series, I highly recommend that you pick it up and read it. It's about Robert Jordan, the author, and what's behind everything, all the place names and all, his time in Vietnam and everything. So it's for those, it's full of spoilers all the way through. But I recommend it for everyone who has read the series. Where you can find me, talking to you here the next couple of weeks, and I have my Twitter account is at TOMP115.
And we certainly do hope you feel better, Stubble. And I want to encourage everybody in the chat to come back and let us know your opinions, regardless of what they are of the story, of the series, of the show. We relish it. We like different opinions here. And of course, I value everybody's opinions so much. So grateful to hear the community talk about what you care about and what's going on in your mind. So do come back. Let us know what you think about those episodes, because we're going to be back, as Stubble has said, over the next few weeks, continuing our review of the Wheel of Time, the television series. We're going to be talking about the books and so much more going forward. Thank you all for being here. And of course, Tom Jr. Jackson as well for being here. We appreciate all of you. And so I was going to say thanks, guys, for the support. Really do enjoy doing this review with you, Stubble. Hopefully you will feel better next week. I hope you get some rest. And everybody who is here today, thank you so much. I think The Wheel of Time is an incredible book series. So I encourage anybody who hasn't read it, as Stubble says that the first book is the least similar to the rest of the series, but go ahead and listen to those audiobooks if you have difficulty reading the print like I do, or go ahead and read those books. It's an incredible read, an incredible listen, and I encourage everyone to do so. Thanks again, everybody, for your support here at the Burn Network and Positive Fandom. And guys, remember, we will be back next week and for the next upcoming weeks to review even more about the series, about the books, and come back and let us know what you guys think. So on behalf of the Burn Network and on Positive Fandom, thank you everybody for being here. And guys, remember, no matter where you are in the galaxy, always remember to please be kind. Take care, everybody.